Welcome to I Hate James Dobson, your source of bi-weekly vicarious religious trauma.
Who are you calling bi?
Is that factually inaccurate, or? Hi everyone, this is Jake, and welcome to a very special one-year anniversary edition of I Hate James Dobson. Today, we are going to be talking about deconstruction from Evangelical Christianity directly. There's always a standing trigger warning for the show about religious trauma and abuse, but we're also going to be talking about self-harm, suicidal ideation, homophobia, and Skillet. I'm particularly proud of this episode, but please make sure you're in a place to engage with the content, and of course, please take care of yourselves. Also, thank you so much for being here on this adventure with us. Whether you've been here all year or this is your very first episode, I am excited and humbled by the response to our little show. We wouldn't be doing it without you all, so truly, thank you. And now, on with the show. Welcome to I Hate James Dobson. My name is Jake. I'm a former evangelical turned queer sex therapist. And today, I'm proud to be joined by the nimble, nice, nosy, newsworthy, noteworthy, neat, and not normal, Brooke.
I loved those.
Thank you.
I think the only one that's false is nimble.
Nimble?
I'm not nimble.
Emotionally, you are.
I have to think about whether that's a compliment or not. I'm emotionally nimble.
Brooke, how are you doing this fine spring?
Yes, happy spring.
It's light outside again.
Yes, it is. Thank God. It feels so nice. If this is the time of year where everyone in Chicago is happy and warm and like kitties just finding little beams of sunlight wherever you can and sitting in them. It's great.
It's nice that I no longer have seasonal depression. I just have regular depression.
That's right.
The first warm day was right after daylight savings. So it was warm and light, and it felt like I had just done a bunch of cocaine.
Nice.
Or what I assume cocaine is like. I've never done it. Nor do I want to. I feel like my heart would explode. Brooke, what are you looking forward to as a world awakens?
I am looking forward to this spring sitting outside at restaurants.
That's
I
good.
love that.
I love that.
I'm looking forward to ignoring anything to do with this country we live in. You know what I mean. I'm not ignoring it. Oh my God, don't get all up in arms about it. I'm looking forward to, I have some trips planned.
Ooh. Anywhere fun that you want to share with the internet?
Just around the Midwest.
Okay.
Don't worry about it, internet.
Nothing like the Midwest in the spring.
I think that's from a musical, isn't it?
I think so. Brooke.
Yes?
Happy anniversary. This episode comes out on our 1-year anniversary.
What? I had no idea. Oh, that's so cute. It's really been a pleasure.
March 17th, the very first episode of I Hate James Dobson dropped.
I want everyone to know the story of how this podcast came to be. One day I was at work and I was on a break and there was a bunch of coworkers hanging out in my office because I have the party office.
You do. And
Jake was there and said, "Would you ever want to be on this podcast I'm going to do?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And now it's been a year. I didn't fully understand. I still don't fully understand what the hell we're talking about, but I love it.
We started recording because I had no idea what the fuck I was doing in October. So we've been doing this for almost like a year and a half now.
Oh my God. Well, I think it's going great.
I think so.
I certainly have a lot more anger in my heart.
Brooke, how has your life changed with a year soaked in Dobson's work?
Yeah. Don't ever say soaked in Dobson anything to me again.
You don't like soaking?
No, not okay. You know what? That's the 1 year you get. I have learned a lot. I've been frightened. I've been educated in some ways. I have been angry at you for ushering me into this terrible world.
As is appropriate.
Yep. I'm reading books about religious trauma now.
Yeah, you started reading Wild Faith.
I did start reading Wild Faith. It's very good. Yeah.
I posted that on Blue Sky. That is doing numbers.
Great. I don't know what Blue Sky is or what doing numbers is, but that sounds good. You should see the text I get from Jake. We got upgraded. Here's a doodle blaster. I'm like, I don't know what any of this is, but it looks like we're doing great.
It's fabulous. I sent you a screenshot of Reddit, and we're like, look at all the upvotes. And you said, what does that mean? I said, oh, I love you so much. I'm so glad your brain is not poisoned in so many of the ways that mine is.
I want to clarify something for the readers. Some little feedback I've been getting, mostly from our coworkers, who say, I like it on the podcast when I can tell that you're really drunk because you sound different. And I want everyone to know I am never drunk on the podcast.
No.
We have a little sip of whiskey going.
We have maybe a glass.
We have less than a glass. I want everyone to know that that's called old lady getting tired.
Yeah. That's not drunk, that's midnight.
That's my new book coming out soon. So for all those listening who have made those comments to me, I am not drunk. I am tired. I have 8 clients. I start at 10 in the morning.
Yeah, we work full days, and then you come and basically just hear all of my religious trauma, so it's basically like you're working, so.
Yeah, so leave me alone. Enjoy the slurry night-night speech I have at the end of these. I'm not drunk, I'm just processing your religious trauma.
Hey, Brooke, how does it feel to have discussed more Dobson books than most people, including most evangelicals? Like, you probably now have a better understanding of Dobson's breadth of work.
Yeah. This book club you and I have that I didn't consent to is, I haven't read anything. I'm reading one book now, but I haven't read any Dobson. But I've done more work for this than for my actual book club or my other actual book club. So it feels not great, but great. I'm glad I don't have to do anything except just sit here and listen to you. And I never want to read a Dobson book. And I truly do actually hate James Dobson.
Deeply.
I mean, I think in the beginning I was like, yeah, that's funny. And now I'm like, no, that's real.
No, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
I have enjoyed writing 10,000 word book reports.
I know.
Every 2 weeks.
I know. You know, sometimes people do ask me if you're okay.
Of all of the things to worry about for me, this is not one of them. Some of my favorite bits, I think calling my older brother Kevin has now infiltrated our language in my family.
In your family? That's so funny. Do you know that it takes me, I won't say it, but it takes me a minute to actually remember Kevin's real name when we talk about Kevin? That is so funny to me. I just want a shirt that says Kevin. What are your other favorite moments from I Hate James Dobson, Jake?
Good question. I actually do have a list of them written down. Number 2 is the fact that I randomly just around my house will go, holy bone.
We haven't holy boned in a little while.
Not for a second.
No, we'll do it. We'll wait till it gets in there naturally today.
The holy bonification was a term that I came up with.
That was a great one.
I appreciate that you told me that you were starting to notice evangelical stuff all over the place, including someone mentioned like Awana.
Yes.
You got like triggered.
Yes, I did. And I was like, wait, that's not even my trauma.
Vicarious trauma.
But you know what is funny is truly the more we've talked about all these things, the more I do see them out in the world. Mm-hmm. Things I didn't know some of what they were before, right? Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to say this thing and everyone's going to like explode because this wasn't the point. I kind of want to read the Bible.
Wow.
I mean, I don't really, but I kind of do because I just want to see how far removed from the Bible Christianity has gotten.
That's interesting.
Evangelical has gotten.
Interesting.
I don't really want to, so I'm probably not going to. I can barely get through my fairy books and my snooty books for my snooty book club, but I am kind of interested.
I don't mean this to be disrespectfully. There's a lot of filler in the Bible. There's literally just like chapters upon chapters of just like genealogy. So like this person was this person's son. This person was this person's son. And unless you are like some very specific type of biblical scholar, it means absolutely nothing.
Yeah. But for those who are in the know, now that I know that there are fairy porn people listening, I read Crescent City, so I think I can get through the Bible.
I do not have the context, but that's incredible. And Brooke, thank you for letting me lean into my love for literary and linguistic alliterations for laughs.
Oh my God, you're so good at it.
Brooke, as today is our 1-year anniversary, I wanted to do something a little bit special.
Okay, great.
The point of this podcast isn't actually me working through my trauma. I pay Alex, my therapist, a lot of money to do that. The point of this is to look at the works of James Dobson and critique them as professional peers.
Right.
Secondarily, it's to look at the impact of evangelical culture, both personally and systemically. I want to look at the arguments they make, the influence they have, and importantly, how to fight back. Today, though, I wanted to be a little bit more vulnerable, to make it personal and to let you and the readers into more of my reasonings behind how I operate, why I tick the ways I do, and why I might focus on things that seem somewhat arbitrary. Yes, Brooke, today and next episode, I'm going to be telling the story of how I stopped being an evangelical.
Oh my god! I thought we were going to talk about some band called Skillet.
Oh, we are!
Oh.
We sure are! We'll get there!
Wait, I'm going to cry. I cried when you did your other personal one. Now I'm going to cry again.
I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe. We'll see.
Probably. Your therapist's name is Alex?
Mm-hmm.
That's so cute. Mine's name is Amy.
Aw.
Great job, therapist. I have been waiting for this. It feels perfect for the 1-year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I was in a, I don't know, like a purity ball gown or something.
I didn't even bring my ring. Aw.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm so excited.
This story is split into 2 parts across these 2 episodes, Deconstruction and Reconstruction. Today's episode is, at least in these notes, called Burn It Down. This is the story of how I left the church. The next episode is how I built a life apart from the church. These are 2 separate but related processes. And for the sake of narrative, and because sometimes life works out nicely, our story today is also kind of the story of my coming out.
Wow. I'm so excited for this.
Thank you. Before I get into it, I don't want this to be about me dragging people through the mud. My coming out was not always the smoothest, but I've done a ton of processing and therapy about this. I still want to focus on how evangelicalism functions as a philosophy and as a movement, but instead of reading a text, we have a first-hand experience. Not everything I say will generalize to everyone. I'm not trying to make it general. I'm also not looking for sympathy from other people. I will do my best to stay away from a feeling of woe is me. My life is actually pretty fucking rad now.
Yeah, your life is rad.
Even though I'm going to be talking about hard stuff, I don't want your pity. I hate pity. I'm doing fine.
Aww, that's nice.
So, when we last left my story, I was a deeply closeted, autistic 13-year-old American kid living on a military base in Germany. What a place to start. My childhood was filled with many happy memories of church groups like Awana, going to Toby Mac concerts, VBS in the summer, listening to Adventures in Odyssey with my homeschooled friends as we played make-believe with stuffed animals in the rooms. Things that, looking back, I have complicated feelings about, but are still largely good memories. But I was also grappling with the darker side of evangelicalism. I had given my heart to Jesus at a youth group retreat, and while there were many reasons for this, it was in large part due to a learned self-loathing specifically about my queerness. Let's stay in Germany for a second longer. I was an awkward, angsty teenager for Jesus. Even as I never really fit in with the mainstream, I had a decent enough sense of belonging. I loved my youth group, for instance. I looked forward to it each week, as well as the after-school coffee shop they'd set up. So after school, all the kids could just go and get free coffee and play games, and it was all volunteer run. I would volunteer there sometimes, too.
Nice.
I was in Boy Scouts, which was an experience that I loved and still largely look back fondly on. Spending a week in the Swiss Alps for summer camp, going to an international jamboree in Belgium, hiking the tallest mountain in Germany, and the adults of the troop letting us have a pretty remarkable degree of autonomy. In Boy Scouts, I played a couple different roles. I was senior patrol leader at one point, but I was also in a role called chaplain's aide.
Chaplain's aide?
So I was the pastor of the troop.
Okay.
And that's not a very common role. Not a lot of troops have it, so I went out of my way to be the pastor of the troop.
Is Boy Scouts Jesus?
Yes.
Oh.
So Boy Scouts is primarily a military recruiting tool.
Oh.
Especially on a military base, but not just exclusively. It's modeled after military formation. So a Boy Scout unit is called a troop.
Oh, right, yeah.
I was the senior patrol leader. I was in charge of the whole group. Your chaplain's aide, there's a lot of militarism that goes into it. But also, along with being militaristic, it's also pretty religious and pretty Christian. You don't have to be a Christian to be a part of it, but that coded language of evangelicalism is everywhere, and also it's pretty explicit as well. There's a lot of mentions of God, and there's a lot of awards you can get. I got like God and Country or something as an award. It's pretty Jesus-y.
Okay.
Also in this time, I was partly homeschooled for a year, which was a pretty good experience. I say partly homeschooled. military bases do not care about you unless you are in high school, or they have to report college admittance and like SATs and shit. Also, there's a pretty direct pipeline from military schools to people going into the military. I basically didn't learn fuck all from 2nd through 6th grade. And by that time, my parents were kind of fed up with it. So my mom homeschooled me for English, social studies, history, and Bible.
Wow.
And then I went to school for science, math, and German. Things that she didn't feel confident being able to teach me in. And my school had a block schedule. So it was 1 day homeschooled, 1 day public school, 1 day homeschool, 1 day public school.
Wow.
And my mom did a great job teaching me. I learned more from her that 1 year than I did pretty much the entire time I was in military schools combined.
Get it, Janet.
And we got to do cool projects like building a ziggurat cake while learning about ancient Mayans. I learned about the Old Testament rules. I know way too much about the tabernacle now because of this. I was also connected with other homeschool kids. It wasn't an isolated event. We even went out on a mission trip to Poland with other homeschooled families. So I had a pretty good sense of belonging there. And I played lacrosse on a German lacrosse team.
You did?
Uh-huh.
Every day I learn a new thing about you.
Lacrosse in Germany is not the best, and I was particularly bad, but I had friends on the team. In all of these experiences, like I said, I had friends. I had one friend, my best friend at the time, who did all of these things with me. The youth group retreat that I mentioned in our last episode, he was my roommate for it. We were the same rank in Boy Scouts. I joined the lacrosse team because of him. I've never been a person who needs or particularly wants a lot of friends, just a few really good friends, and he was that for me. He also had a very cool older brother that I absolutely had a crush on.
Aww.
It was my best friend's older brother, which is such a cliche, who introduced me to the Christian rock band Skillet.
There we go.
We'll be talking about Skillet a little bit later. I wasn't thriving per se in Germany. It was the beginning of adolescence, which is generally a pretty tumultuous time. The war within me between queerness and Jesus was raging for sure. My relationship with Kevin was particularly bad at the time because of this internalized self-hatred that I was projecting onto him. But still, I had a sense of belonging. But
you were mean to Kevin?
Yeah, I was pretty mean to Kevin because he is really like good and kind and smart and like caring person. And accordingly, generally people liked him. And I was so self-loathing of myself. It's like, why do people like you? And why do I feel so bad all the time?
Aww.
We have made up about it
of course.
since. But between 7th and 8th grade, though, when I was 13, we moved from Germany back to the US. And that sense of belonging was decimated. It was the first time in my life that I didn't live on a military base. Some of the kids at school had literally known each other since birth, which is an idea that still remains insane to me. The best friend that I mentioned, we knew each other, we best friends for 2 years. Mm-hmm. I had one other childhood friend that I met from a time in North Dakota. We also only knew each other for 2 years. Everyone in the military is on a different schedule of moving, so you make and lose friends pretty fast. So lifelong friends? Ain't no way I'm fucking coming in there. Also, starting school in 8th grade is not a natural transition. When you go from middle school to high school, it's kind of like a soft reboot. New year, new school, some new people. Not here, though. No one likes a random character introduced at the end of the second act. It ruins the continuity. I tried joining some clubs to no real avail. I joined the lacrosse team, but lacrosse, where I lived, was like a religion. I put as a bench player on the C team. I literally only got to play because they couldn't cut anyone, and the rules said that every player had to play during each game. I was in student government, but I didn't know the culture, so I wasn't a good representative. I remember being really upset about the idea of an ugly Christmas sweater party because I hadn't heard that term before, and I thought it was really mean to call people's sweaters ugly.
Oh.
I also had to take some weird classes because my credits didn't transfer, which is a weird thing for middle school. I had to take gym all year round because I didn't have enough gym credits. And a great way to make friends when you are a lanky, awkward, closeted teenager is to change clothes and get sweaty with a bunch of 6th graders all year.
Oh, God. Why? What is our obsession with gym?
I don't fucking know. It didn't teach me how to work out. It didn't teach me to be exercised. It mostly taught me how to change very quietly in a bathroom stall.
Yeah, gym is, it's like torture for everyone. Well, really quickly, can I just tell you that in my high school gym class in Wisconsin, we had to take dancing units, so we would learn how to dance at different types of parties.
Interesting.
Like polka and square dance.
Uh-huh.
And then the teacher, who I found out later was arrested, he would pick a king and a queen of each dance, and I was the queen.
Damn right you were.
Of the Hava Nagila.
Nice! I think you've mentioned this to Jordan before.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite, proudest moments. I've probably mentioned it on the podcast before, but you know what? Too bad.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Apparently, in like elementary school gym class in the place where I lived, they also did a dance unit, and everyone learned Cotton Eye Joe.
Oh my God.
I only learned about this because I went to one dance in high school, and they turned on Cotton Eye Joe, and all of a sudden everyone started dancing in unison.
That's frightening.
I had no idea. I felt so left out. I felt like, I don't know. It was scary.
This is like the reverse of this podcast. It's like all these things that were like normal in my life that you're like, it was so scary.
It was weird.
Yeah.
My main hope for belonging was in the church. Because we weren't on a military base, we had our choice in churches. Church shopping or church speed dating is a thing that happens. I remember not liking one church because the week we went, the pastor gave a sermon about the book of Revelation, and it didn't align with Left Behind, which I assumed was based on biblical fact. We eventually settled on a Southern Baptist church because that's what we had been going to for the last 7 years. A lot of churches have names like Living Water and New Hope. I'll be referring to this church as New Directions.
Mm-hmm.
New Directions is also the name of the show choir in Glee.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which I know they would hate, and that just brings me joy.
What do you think the Venn diagram of show choirs, churches, and therapy practices
oh my God
names is?
There's probably a pretty good amount of overlap. Therapy practices have... I'm going to cut this... What a horrible name.
God. Yeah, but they always do have, it's always like some sort of nature, calming nature path.
Yep. New Directions was a small, relatively new church. There's about 30 people in regular attendance. Probably goes without saying, but it was overwhelmingly white.
Mm.
There also weren't a ton of kids my age, but I did settle into a kind of belonging. I was always a precocious kid, meaning I was always very annoying, but my love for scripture and theology was endearing to the adults of the church. New Directions was run by a pastor, we will call Saul, which is a biblical burn, who ran the whole church. His wife was in charge of the social committees and the choir. His son-in-law ran the youth group along with his wife, the pastor's daughter, and their son was in the band. It was basically just one family running this whole show.
Oh, yeah.
What I liked about evangelicalism and Southern Baptist churches was it fit really, really well into black and white thinking. If the Bible is the word of God and the Bible says something, it must be true. Yes, you need to look at the context, and it can take a lifetime to understand certain parts, but it is God talking to us. There's a handbook for life for us to read. Obviously, actual theology is very open to interpretation, as we've discussed before, but that oversimplistic narrative is really appealing, especially when you're fucking 13 years old.
Yeah.
Saul, like many evangelical pastors, only engages in a nuanced discussion of theology when it fits his predisposed worldview. But Saul also had a folksy charm, kind of like Dobson, like saying Bible stood for basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Oh my God.
His sermons were basically just bigoted Facebook posts posted as biblical truths. The next year, I went to high school. I was realizing that my true home was the church. Again, I was precocious, and again, that does mean annoying, and I knew a ton about the Bible. I wanted to be a pastor, and I made that known. In church, there was a special advanced youth group. You see, youth group in the church was made up of middle schoolers and high schoolers together. A decision made initially, I imagine, because they didn't have enough people to separate them. But there's a really big difference between what a 6th grader and a 12th grader, someone who's 12 and 17, can handle when discussing spirituality and theology. Youth group was the outreach, so they don't make it 100% of the Bible 100% of the time. There's snacks, there's games, what have you. This special youth group was meant for the hardcore devout kids. It was called walking lessons.
Walking lessons?
Because we were learning how to walk with God.
Oh.
Like the footprints in the sand pool.
Oh, right, uh-huh.
Yeah. We were also then leaders in the youth group. We were asked to lead prayer sometimes. We were meant to be examples in character for the other kids. There's sometimes a youth group band, and it was mostly made up of people from walking lessons. My childhood Bible is full of notes and annotations and reflections, mostly from my time in walking lessons. My family is also very involved in the church, and the church was very involved with us. My dad was in charge of the games at youth group, and did a really good job at it. Shout out Brad.
Good job, Brad.
In my freshman year, my younger brother Tyler went through a ton of medical stuff, and resulted in unexpected and prolonged hospital stays. New Directions helped my family out a lot during this time. People brought my parents food. The youth group intern pastor, a seminary student home for break, watched me during long days when my parents weren't home. One summer, I worked VBS at New Directions, and Tyler missed it because he was in the hospital, so a number of VBS volunteers gave him a surprise visit in the hospital to sing songs and put on skits so we wouldn't have to miss VBS.
That's sweet.
Having the church be so important to me wasn't necessarily doing me any favors at school, as you might imagine. I joined the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, I was not an athlete.
You know, this is not going to be for a joke about age. What year was this?
My first year of high school was 2011.
11. Oh, okay. Because this was I'm just thinking about how this was a particularly cynical time in pop culture and in I always wonder what it would be like to have been a teen in the 2007 to 11 era, right? It was kind of nasty.
I think this was 2012, but yeah.
Okay.
This was the only Christian club at school, so of course I had to join. I joined theater. I found my home in theater. I did theater all 4 years of high school. I was in every single production that I could. I did different things. Sometimes I acted. Sometimes I played piano. But I was involved in it pretty hardcore. Especially early on, I made an informal group of people who would pray before rehearsal. I was told then to stop making the announcement that we're going to go pray because it made people uncomfortable, which is fair. This is the time I did See You at the Pole.
Oh, I was just going to ask if you were seeing people at the pole.
I sure was. I wore cross necklaces and Jesus shirts. In free reading in my English class, I read a book called Jesus Freaks, which was stories about Christian martyrs throughout time, written by the people of a band called DC Talk, who had a song called Jesus Freaks.
This was public school?
Yep.
Were you okay?
I mean, clearly not.
No, but I mean, were you bullied?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was. It's complicated, right? Because a lot of my beliefs were bigoted, and although I don't think I was a firebrand, God hates fags kind of bigot, I had really harmful beliefs, and it's understandable why people didn't want to be around me, but also people made it known they didn't want to be around me, and they were other fucking freshmen in high school, so they weren't particularly emotionally mature about making that known. I wasn't trying to show off. I just was totally bought into the evangelical worldview. Jesus was the savior of the world. You could know God, personally. If you really, really believe that, I think it makes sense to be a little bit obsessive about it. This was also the year that gay marriage was going to be on the ballot in the state that I was in. This is 2012, 2013, so before Obergefell v. Hodges, when it was still very contentious as an issue. New Directions, and especially Saul, were not thrilled about this. I heard many, many sermons about how we should vote against it, how it's destroying the world, destroying society, etc., etc. It was a frequent topic of conversation at school, too. It did me no favors being against gay marriage, especially being in theater, and this was the year that my peers really started coming out, too. My first ever girlfriend, a Catholic, actually broke up with me because her best friend came out and I wasn't supportive enough of him. Fair, I suppose. I imagine it wasn't great to be around, but also, oh, fucking hell. I was deep in puberty now, and my sexuality was hitting a peak. I felt increasing levels of shame about this. It was here that I really started to self-harm as some kind of compensatory behavior. It was also especially tied in with masturbation. It wasn't the only reason that I self-harmed, and I didn't do it every time, but self-harm was almost exclusively tied to the fact that I was gay. And now is when we return to the band Skillet. I love Skillet. Brooke, I'm going to text you a picture.
Yes. Why were they called Skillet?
It was 3 people, and they had a bunch of different styles of music, and their pastor at the time said, if you put all this stuff together, it's like putting it in a skillet.
Oh.
That's about all the thought that went into it. I just sent you a picture of me with the members of Skillet.
Oh my god. Okay, hang on. Jake.
This is probably my 4th or 5th
weird because
Skillet concert.
You look like you, and I know it's you, but it's alternate universe, Jake. Oh.
This picture specifically was taken after I came out. So we're a little bit further in the timeline in the picture than we are in the story. But
I mean, they're gay, right? Skillet?
Legally, I have to say no. There is some curiosity.
I mean, this guy is for sure.
That's the lead singer. His name is John Cooper. Skillet is a Christian rock band, and undeniably so. But they've got a ton of mainstream success.
Oh, okay.
At their peak, they really mastered the slipperiness of the evangelical language. Their most popular songs don't mention Jesus by name, and they have a strong beat driven by drums, which is still controversial in some Christian spaces.
Drums?
Yep.
Just in general?
Yep.
Okay.
The lyrics are the epitome of if you know about evangelical language. Both men that I've dated in my life were fans of Skillet, and neither were initially aware of their evangelical roots.
Oh, interesting.
Nowadays, John Cooper, the lead singer of Skillet, is a big fucking MAGA freak.
Ew.
John Cooper wrote a book entitled Wimpy, Weak, and Woke.
Great.
Yeah. They are no longer kind of if you know, they've kind of gone full MAGA.
They know.
I Hate James Dobson. I'm very disappointed in Skillet.
That's even worse.
At the time, though, I really liked them. I paid money to be part of their fan club called the Panheads.
No, they were not called the Panheads.
They sure were.
Okay.
They had a book club and a Bible study that started when I lived in Germany, so I would wake up at 3 a.m. to watch the live stream. Throughout my life, I saw them 5 times. My very first Skillet concert was a special birthday gift from my parents to me in the very first year that we moved to Maryland. Skillet concerts were a really important way of bonding with my dad. Even though I'm not a fan anymore, those memories still remain pretty special to me. In 2009, Skillet released their 7th album entitled Awake. Their previous album, Comatose, was nominated for a Grammy in 2008.
Wait, Comatose?
Comatose.
Damn.
I wish it was toast.
Yeah.
Comatose. This album, Awake, went double platinum and won a Billboard Music Award for Top Christian Album in 2011. It was popular. The second song on that album is called Monster. This remains their most popular song ever. It peaked at number 20 on the Billboard Rock Songs chart, and number 4 on mainstream rock charts.
Have I heard this?
Possibly. It reached the Elite 8 in MTV's rotation, and was the 10th most played Halloween song of 2010. The NFL used a different song, Hero, to promote Sunday Night Football in 2009. They got mainstream success.
I know we can't play it, but can you play me a little monster?
I sure will. This is ostensibly a song about one's relationship to being a sinner, with sin being the monster. It takes on a whole new level when one is a closeted teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we can't play this on the
Right.
pod for copyright reasons, so the lyrics start off, "The secret side of me I never let you see. I keep it caged, but I can't control it. So stay away from me. The beast is ugly. I feel the rage and I just can't hold it. It's scratching on the walls, in the closet and in the halls. It comes awake and I can't control it. Hiding under the bed, in my body and in my head. Why won't somebody come and save me from this? Make it end."
Jake.
People self-harm for many reasons. For me, it was a punishment. I felt disgusting, vile. I was so ashamed that I couldn't control my same-sex attractions. I felt like a monster. I felt like I was living a double life. I knew the scriptures and I knew theology. I was trying to be an example of Jesus in the world, but I was also a degenerate who couldn't control my most base and sinful urges. This was not sustainable. The amount of self-hate that I had, the amount of pain that I was in, none of it could last long term. At first, I thought leaning entirely into white American Jesus would save me. In my sophomore year, I began dating another evangelical girl. I've mentioned this before, but this was the full I kissed dating goodbye experience. I had to write letters and rules and get her parents' blessing, and our parents had to meet. It was a months-long process for us to start dating. I thought I was an excellent boyfriend to her. I wanted what was best for her, not just to get laid, as that's what I was taught all secular teens wanted in relationships. I was close friends with a guy from youth group. We'll call him Justin. Justin and I went to Liberty University's College for a Weekend event, where prospective students get to live in the dorms, sit in on classes, and see what Liberty University is all about. Brooke, do you know anything about Liberty University?
No.
Okay. Does the name Jerry Falwell mean anything to you?
Yes.
Who is Jerry Falwell?
Bad guy.
Yes, very much so. Jerry Falwell Sr. founded Liberty University. He is of the era of Billy Graham.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Falwell created the Moral Majority, which is a political movement action committee thing to help elect Ronald Reagan in the 1980 presidential election. Falwell, perhaps more than anyone else, is responsible for white evangelicals bursting into American political life. Liberty University is the private Christian university that he founded, which is a little bit scammy. They are accredited, but the university is almost a pretext for real estate.
Is this like Trump University?
More legitimate,
Uh-huh.
but similar vein, for sure. They know their audience, and they offer a lot of scholarships that really benefit church kids and homeschool groups. And also the military. They are one of the largest online universities for current and former military members. When I was growing up on military bases, I saw ads for Liberty University online all over the place. It wasn't really until later that I made the connection between the two. You got a completely free ride to the university if you graduated valedictorian or salutatorian, so 1 or 2 in your class. Editing Jake here again. Technically, it is full tuition, not a full ride. It doesn't really matter. Fuck Liberty University. This is a lot easier to do if you are in a homeschool co-op with like 3 people. Liberty University was founded by Jerry Falwell, who once said, quote, "AIDS is not just God's punishment for homosexuals. It is God's punishment for a society that tolerates homosexuals."
There we go. It all just clicked in my brain. Jerry Falwell. He's distinct looking, correct? Yes. Okay. Yes. Jerry Falwell, AIDS epidemic, the 80s, Reagan. It all just popped up suddenly.
It is technically inaccurate to say you cannot be gay and go to Liberty University. There are queer people that go there, and you all are stronger than I ever am or will be. But they have a code of conduct that says you are not allowed to have any amount of same-sex relations at all on or off campus. Your professors are going to be pretty fucking homophobic. Like, it is a struggle to be there. When I went, I was a sophomore, and they couldn't directly offer me acceptance to the school yet. But they gave me an application to fill out, and they held on to it and said to email them in a few months. I was only getting worse in this time. More self-loathing, more depression. The more I was trying to live within the rules given to me, the worse I felt and the more destructive I became. More quotes from Monster. "I feel it deep within. It's just beneath the skin. I must confess that I feel like a monster. I hate what I've become. The nightmare's just begun. I must confess that I feel like a monster." I couldn't come out. That would destroy my soul. Sure, this was destroying my body and my life here on earth, but my soul and my eternal life was in Jesus. I was solid in my eternal fate. But like, what if I did come out? The thought did cross my mind. My secret side I keep hid under lock and key. I keep it caged, but I can't control it. 'Cause if I let him out, he'll tear me up and break me down. Why won't somebody come and save me from this make it end? During summer break, after my sophomore year, I went on 2 big trips. The first was to the International Thespian Festival in Nebraska, where I got to perform with my high school theater troupe, music that I had written and won awards.
Wow.
It was a week-long trip, and while I didn't feel super welcome by most of my school peers, I did get to make friends with people from other schools, including one guy who I thought was very cute, who happened to be from a nearby school in the same state. I went from that trip basically straight into a 3-week trip to Alaska with one of my aunts. It was the first time I got a mohawk. I have another picture for you with that.
You did?
Yes.
Your aunt took you on a 3-week trip to Alaska?
She sure did.
That's the aunt I strive to be.
She's incredible.
Look at this. I forget, now this is going to be a joke about age. I forget that when I'm about to see a picture of you from your high school days, it was like 10 minutes ago.
It's the retinol more than anything else. I had a lot of time to think and reflect and to be away from the pressure of everything on this trip. When I got back to somewhere with a cell signal at the end of that 3 weeks, the very first person that I wanted to text wasn't my girlfriend, wasn't my parents. It was that cute boy from the theater conference a few weeks ago. That was the final straw. That was undeniable. I had just had to accept that I was gay then. I have a rather chronic inability to fake my feelings, so once I accepted that I was gay, I came out to people rather quickly. I came out to my parents the next month. We were on a family trip with a different aunt to an oceanside touristy kind of town. So in an act of both bravery and extreme cowardice, I went to a shop with a bunch of kitschy shirts, and I pointed to one that said, "Sorry ladies, I'm gay," and told my parents, "I need that shirt."
That's how you came out?
That is how I came out.
Oh my God.
For my coming out being so dramatic, the actual coming out was very anticlimactic.
Yeah. Wait, what did they say?
I don't remember. I really don't remember how my parents reacted in the coming days. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't a lot of thought being put into this choice either, but I think I did it because it felt like it limited my parents' ability to react poorly. We were in public. It was a seemingly passing comment. We were with family who was more liberal than my parents at the time. But I also knew that I needed to break up with my girlfriend. I wasn't ready to come out at church and school, but if I was gay, it was not fair to date her. I felt pretty fine about that. I wrote her a letter with vague messages like, "I can't be there for you in ways that you deserve." I broke up with her after youth group one day and gave her the letter. Her dad was pissed. We didn't I-kiss dating goodbye for us to break up after like 6 months. He demanded that I meet with him at Panera Bread and explain myself.
Yes.
He didn't think those vague messages were good enough and eventually forced me to come out. Turns out I broke up with your daughter because I'm gay was a good enough reason, and the meal ended shortly after. I was kind of out then. I didn't tell a bunch of other people. Some people knew. I didn't deny it, but I lived in this like vague, semi-out state for a little bit. I am not one for school dances. I don't like large crowds, and I didn't have a lot of friends at the time. But my inner chutzpah made me decide to go to homecoming that year with a guy.
Wow. I
have another picture of that, but I have to find it. He was a friend of that guy from the theater convention. It was November, and I came out for real. He was also the first guy that I kissed. I don't have a ton of things to say about him, or we weren't particularly close then, and we aren't now. But I am forever grateful that in a really difficult time, he was a safe person to make a good and very special memory with. I sent you a picture of me at homecoming. I was a gay in crisis, so I had to bleach my hair, of course. Oh my God. And I was 17 at this time, so I was not good at it.
No, you weren't. He's a cutie.
Yeah. I had really bad body dysmorphia at the time, so I did not pose well for any picture. It's something that I've only recently gotten better at doing.
Little red bow tie.
Mm-hmm. Now that I was out, I had to deal with the church. When the church found out that I was going to homecoming with a boy, I was suddenly and rather unceremoniously stripped of almost every part of church membership. Playing piano for some church services? Gone. Helping out with the VBS? Gone. Leading a prayer in youth group? Gone. Being part of that special high school youth group? Gone. It wasn't specifically New Directions either. Any hopes of going to Liberty University was dashed. I was also really in talks with the people at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Those died very quickly. As I said, you can be queer at Liberty University, but you are a target. My heart goes out to any queer students and alumni of Liberty University. Thank you for your service. This was my whole life. All of my friends, any sense of direction in life, my sense of purpose, gone in the blink of an eye. And that decision was made without me being in the room. I just was informed of this happening one day. Junior year in American high schools is when you really start thinking about the rest of your life. College applications happen early your senior year the next year, and all of my hopes and dreams and plans were gone. It's hiding in the dark, its teeth are razor sharp. There's no escape for me, it wants my soul, it wants my heart. No one can hear me scream, maybe it's just a dream, maybe it's inside of me. Stop this monster. I've always wanted to read and learn things. When I realized I was gay and a Christian, I began reading books and listening to sermons about people's interpretations of the Bible just to understand what it actually said. I remember listening to a sermon by a guy named Matthew Vines, author of God and the Gay Christian, the biblical case in support of same-sex marriage. Clearly, he found an interpretation of the Bible that was pro-gay. I also read Torn by Justin Lee, which was his struggle with biblical texts as a gay Christian. But I also listened to sermons and lectures by people like Ravi Zacharias, we've talked about before, a rapist, and John Piper, a shitty theologian. I really tried to get some perspectives and figure it out for myself. One of the things that I really liked about that approach to theology from Southern Baptism, the Bible is the Word of God, it's you can figure it out yourself. You should listen to people and listen to your pastor, but if it's God talking directly to you. So I really thought I could try to understand it. Some of the arguments that were made were things like, our understanding of sexual orientation isn't how it was when the Bible was written, or the New Testament verses seem to be more about the practice of pedophilia and not two consenting adults. The people around me were having none of it. No one would even hear me out. I was told explicitly, you're wrong, you know you're wrong, and you're lying to yourself about this.
God.
One night, the youth pastor was driving me somewhere and tried to comfort me. He still wouldn't hear my questions, but he tried to give me as much empathy as he could. He told me, for instance, that people in the church struggled to change their views. It was even a big deal when the one black couple wanted to become members of the church. That did not make me feel any better.
No.
I was allowed to keep two things in church. I could still attend church, how very generous, and I would still be able to go on a missions trip to Guatemala early the next year. The last one I don't think was out of the goodness of their hearts. I am almost certain they would much prefer that I not go. But I'd been fundraising for like a year to go. It was a group thing. It'd be messy if I didn't go. It was only like 2 months away at that point. We left for Guatemala in early February. We were to be gone for a week. The mission that we went to was a big center with a lot of different churches coming there at once. Mission trips are scams, especially this place. There were a few teens like me, but it was by and large adults who were volunteering. And the whole time, things felt off. My peers were cold and distant. I wasn't allowed to be part of some group activities. Like, most of the group went to build houses and move rocks, and they nonchalantly said I had to go with one other lady from the church to paint a mural at an old folks' home right off the mission grounds. She was very kind, but I knew what was going on. A few people, almost all of them strangers, came up to me randomly throughout this week to give me their take on homosexuality. I didn't know them, nor did I tell them I was gay. Word just got around about it. As I'm sure you can imagine, none of their takes were particularly great. That constant barrage of intense homophobia, with varying degrees of a facade of kindness, pervaded the trip. It was like being forced to eat arsenic or shit over and over and over again, but sometimes you sprinkle a little bit of sugar on it. I came home feeling utterly defeated and hopeless. The next week, the sermon at church focused on telling the church about this mission trip. The church helped finance it, and the people love to feel like they're making a difference. So I'm sitting there, by myself, in the back of the sanctuary. I'm in a church that has all but kicked me out. All of people that I once thought were my friends and siblings in Christ had abandoned me. My own relationship with my parents felt irreparably broken. The air conditioning in the sanctuary was turned up and I was so cold. I am deep in depression. And for some fucking reason, call it the Holy Spirit moving in him, Saul took a tangent from the mission trip recap to talk about an issue that God had laid on his heart. Yeah, Saul went on like a 5-minute rant about the evils of homosexuality.
Oh, God. In the church service?
Mm-hmm.
Were you explicitly told you couldn't be part of those things anymore, like
Yes.
youth group and piano and stuff?
Yep. I could still go to youth group, I just couldn't, like...
But they were like, because you're gay, you're
Yep.
not... Oh my God.
Yep. It wasn't because I was struggling with same-sex attractions, it was because I was embracing a homosexual lifestyle, which is a distinction without a difference. If I'd stayed in that time of self-loathing, I still don't think they would have been okay with it, but I might have had more of a case to maintain some of those things. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't even angry, just broken. I got up, quietly walked out of the sanctuary. I texted my parents that I was leaving, but I didn't have a car, and rural Appalachia, it's hard to navigate when you're 17 and walking around. I had a job at Chick-fil-A at that point, which is a whole separate thing, so I had some money. So I walked along the side of the road to a nearby Royal Farms, which is a gas station chain, and bought myself a donut and a Sprite. And I sat outside in the cold February in defeated silence, unable to cry, unable to feel much of anything at all. I felt heavy. I felt numb. I feel like a monster. In March of that year, shortly after this, in the middle of all this fucking bullshit, my parents bought me tickets to a touring production of a little show you might have heard called Wicked. I went with my neighbor, who didn't go to my school and was one of my only friends at the time. Still think very positively of her. I knew nothing about Wicked going into it, other than like, it's cool. In that show, I saw a story of a clever, talented, misunderstood person with immense talent, vast emotional strength, and a strong sense of values step into their power, losing everything they wanted, but gaining truth and finding love, especially love for herself. It was inspirational. Also, slightly as a tangent, I find Elphaba's relationship to being green really interesting. Like, that's the most direct reason people hate her, but really, they hate that she's different. She's so powerful and self-driven, and a lot of people just don't understand her. That's why she's an outcast. The green skin is just a convenient excuse. Mm-hmm. I wasn't kicked out of the church because I was gay. That was an incredible catalyst for sure, but really, I lost everything in the church because I refused to defer to them anymore. I refused to live in that self-loathing. And the one thing the evangelical church hates, it's not sin. It's a threat to their unilateral power and control. You can still be with the wizard, what you've worked and waited for. You can have all you ever wanted. I know. But I don't want it. I can't want it anymore. I was devastated. I felt betrayed by everyone. I felt ganged up on, completely embarrassed, having to intensely question some very basic foundations about how I viewed myself, the world, life, love, God. I knew I needed to come out. Keeping a secret like that would have killed me. I got pretty close as it was. I don't have a good theological argument for this statement. I didn't then, I don't now. I already know all the verses and the pushback in theology, but I knew then and I knew now. Being gay and being in a gay relationship, it's not a sin. Not in any way that matters. I know myself. I know the love I have for a boyfriend. As a marriage and family therapist, I get to see the love that queer people have become stronger. I get to see them learn to be patient and kind, to show compassion and right old wrongs. I've seen people sacrifice so much for the ones that they love. Each and everything that I see as a blessing of life in heterosexual relationships, I see the exact same thing in gay relationships. Something has changed within me. Something's not the same. I'm through with playing by the rules of someone else's game. Too late for second guessing. Too late to go back to sleep. It's time to trust my instincts, close my eyes, and leap. I'd come out, which was necessary to do, especially to get out of the pits of depression, but coming out alone didn't fix that depression. That period of time, when I was like 16, 17, 18, was really tough. I had no one on my side, I felt. Things with my parents were tough. My younger brother was still spending extended periods of time in and out of the hospital, sometimes hospitals across the country for specialized care. I had no friends, no community, no sense of security anywhere. Too long I'd been afraid of losing love. I guess I'd lost, but if that's love, it comes at much too high a cost. I still went to school. It gave me something to do, and my kind of brain does well in school, and I enjoy learning and getting grades for things. I have a dog brain, is what I'm saying. I took 10 advanced placement courses in high school. These are marketed as college classes in high school, and you take a big standardized test at the end of the year. And if you score high enough, many colleges will count that towards college credit. I took those classes for something to do, but also as a promise to myself that I would get out of this place, physically and mentally, and that I would fucking thrive. I didn't grow up here. I knew there was a great big world out there. I didn't know how, but as they say, nobody in all of Oz, no wizard that there is or was ever going to bring me down. It was in these classes that I found a sense of direction. I had expected to go to seminary and become a pastor. That was the plan for years, kind of like my whole life leading up to that point. And now I had less than a year to figure out something new to go to. I briefly considered joining the Air Force, continue military tradition in the family, graduate without debt, get a good job and benefits, and probably not actually have to go to like war or anything. I do not think I would have done well in the military. In part because I was too skeptical of cults at the time. I was decent enough at math. I got a 4 and a 3 on the AP Calc exams. I was okay at history. I learned to love English from 2 pretty amazing English teachers and amazing librarians. But at the start of my senior year, right as college applications were really starting to begin, I took AP Psychology.
Yeah.
And it clicked in my brain. I can understand classical versus operant conditioning. Neurons, love him. Myelin sheaths, neat. Not a fan of Freud, but his ideas are wrong in all kinds of weird and interesting ways. My teacher was also a really nice guy, and I didn't have any classes with him up to that point, so he only got to see me getting better. My road to being a therapist started in that classroom. Also at the time, I tried to find any amount of agency that I could. Through working hard at school, watching Drag Race, my first Drag Race season that I watched live was season 7.
Yay.
Trying to meet other gay people who didn't hate me. My first boyfriend and I met through an app called Manhunt, which is a Grindr knockoff. I don't even know if it's still around. It should not be. This search for agency, desperately clawing at anything I could, created a lot of strife and heartache in my family. My feelings on that time are complicated, and I'm not going to get into the details, but I will say, my family, me, are not them. We have a great relationship now. I'm not always proud of how I acted, and when I look back at that time, I feel just as much shame and guilt as I do anger. In some ways, I was living out Dobson's self-fulfilling prophecy. I had come out and left the church, and my life did fall apart. I used, in part, sex to cope and find meaning. I was the poor lost soul that he warned of, and that he helped create. I started to pull out of the worst of it at the last part of my senior year. For one, I started dating a guy, and he was even around my age. He was a little bit older than me. We didn't know each other in school. He was a metalhead and a gamer and a guy who vaped ferociously and who was very kind. And importantly for our story, very much not a Christian. That relationship helped stabilize me. He let me vent about leaving the faith. He was liked by my family. I will make jokes about him. He's an ex for a reason, but I will be forever grateful for the relationship that we had. And also, my relationship with my family began to improve. We went to family therapy, which sucked, but I think was ultimately helpful. We had a lot of big heart-to-hearts. It didn't undo the damage, but it put us back on the right track. I also felt like I was getting them back on my team again. And, importantly, I was getting the fuck out. Anyone who knew me knew that I needed to leave. So in this time of relative stability, I began to search for what I believed. I really tried to give other sects of Christianity a chance. I went to like 1 or 2 gay affirming churches. I went to some PFLAG meetings. And the people who put them on were very nice, but it is not for me. PFLAG parents are a very specific type of parent, and that is not what I was looking for at the time. I was watching a lot of YouTube. I went from watching sermons by rapist Ravi Zacharias to watching people debunk theological arguments. People like Cosmic Skeptic. I was also a huge fan of a channel called The Bible Reloaded. Here is the premise. Tell me if this sounds familiar. 2 friends, a former evangelical and someone who was well-rounded in the world but didn't grow up that way, read the Bible together. The former evangelical will explain it. The non-evangelical will say, "What?" And they'll talk about why it's dumb together.
Wait a minute.
This podcast is a very original idea that I came up with on my own. I still follow one of the people from that channel, Actual Jake on Twitch. He's big into wearing corn.
Well, his name is Jake.
His name sure is Jake. At this time, I also looked at Buddhism and Judaism and Islam, Zoroastrianism because it sounds cool. I tried to find anything that felt more correct than evangelical Christianity, but I was still really, really hurt. That kind of whiplash, people who love you one day are telling you how awful and vile they find you to be, made me so distrustful of any person trying to tell me the truth, let alone any institution. And because I was so freshly traumatized, any semblance of religion felt either hostile or fake. One spring evening, in that last little bit of high school, I was walking around my neighborhood with my boyfriend. We were talking about Skillet or something. Rural America is a place built in asphalt and for machines instead of people, so there's not a ton of sidewalks. We were walking on the streets interspersed with sidewalks as it wound its way back to my parents' house. Even though things were getting better, I still tried to stay out with him for as long as possible. As we meandered ever closer, something in the back of my mind clicked. I stopped us by his car parked on the street before going to my parents' house. I sat down on the small patch of grass between the streets and the sidewalk in front of my parents' house. I laid down and I looked up at the stars. I took a breath and looked up to him and said, "I don't believe in God anymore." It didn't feel forced or awkward. It didn't even feel particularly profound. I wouldn't have called myself a Christian by that time by any means, but I felt it change. Like things snapped into place a little bit. I had stabilized. And me saying that, the world didn't end. I wasn't struck down where I stood. I just shared this moment with a really kind person in the warm, wet spring air. I did graduate high school, and I got to a pretty good college. With all of my AP credits, I basically got to skip an entire year of college. I got like 30 credit hours, which is essentially your entire first year. Making depression work for you. By this time, I didn't have a solid belief system, but I had a very solid value system. I knew what I didn't believe, and I knew that I didn't trust any of it. I knew I felt gross and angry when I felt like anything was being imposed onto me. I knew I didn't trust anyone to have the answers that were right. I knew that most people didn't have my experience and didn't really want to question their own faith in the same way, but that was enough for me at the time. This episode is called Burn It Down because that's what I wanted, and that's what I did. Burn it all down and start over. Rebirth. In a very real way, I was living 2 Corinthians 5:17, a verse I'm sure we both know, but I'll say it here for our listeners.
Thanks.
I am a new creation. The old has gone and the new has come. We're going to end this narrative on my first day of college. I was randomly assigned a roommate, and we're going to meet in person for the first time. We talked a little bit before on Facebook. I asked if I could bring my pet leopard gecko. He said yes, as long as I can bring my life-size cutout of John Cena. We got along great. When I got there, my roommate had already arrived, unpacked a little bit, set up John Cena, and left. I brought my boxes and my suitcase up with help from my parents, Tyler, and my boyfriend. My dad hauled a mini fridge up 4 flights of stairs in an unconditioned, hot, muggy August day. We're right outside of DC, which is a swamp. He loves me. Once we unpack, my parents take me and my boyfriend to the food court on campus. And we walk back to my dorm talking about the amenities, my classes, how big the campus was, and so on. Small talk, really. Emotionally holding on to each other for as long as we could. I expected to be full of nerves, but I wasn't really. Things felt new and big, but promising. My parents and I were both sad to say goodbye, but we all also knew that it was time. I think we all felt better once I had left. We said our tearful and very sweaty goodbyes, and then they got in their car, turned on the engine, and drove away. My boyfriend left me to get settled in. I walked up the stairs, past other excited families helping their kids move in. I got back to my room, closed the solid wooden door behind me, and sat down on my bed. My mom had been sure to make it before she left. The sheets were Pokemon sheets, because hell yeah. I sat down, sighed, looked at John Cena, and back down at myself. I felt a pang of grief and guilt. My breath twinged and it got caught, but I was able to finish the exhale, recenter myself, and breathe back in. More than anything, I was excited. So, if you care to find me, look to the western sky. As someone told me lately, everyone deserves a chance to fly. And if I'm flying solo, at least I'm flying free. To those who ground me, take a message back from me. Tell them how I'm defying gravity. That's where we leave this part of my story. Flying solo and flying free. Next week, we're focused on the so what now? That is deconstruction. We've got to build something new on top of it. Before we go, I have a quick postscript to this part of the story. It is very tonally different and is very petty. I've generally processed the story pretty well. It can be uncomfortable to share. I got a little bit emotional, but it isn't triggering necessarily in the same way. I can approach it with a similar amount of emotional processes as I do with reading a Dobson book, being critical but emotionally removed. Except when it comes to Saul, the pastor of New Directions. He stays a fucking op. 2 days before recording this episode, he made a public post that so perfectly encapsulates the kind of person he is. It's short, because he's both less intelligent and less talented than Dobson, but here are some select quotes. Quote, modern culture has made biblical discipline taboo. Even many Christians consider corporal punishment as some kind of sick leftover of the Dark Ages. Though the Bible is clear on the subject, many parents have ceded ground to the so-called experts who assert that physical discipline is just ineffective, but downright harmful. Moms and dads have been led to believe that any such discipline might warp their child's personality and lead to mental illness. This is simply one of the lies that has led to the detriment of the family. 2 prominent false assumptions are propagated in modern psychology. 1, a child's misbehavior is primarily caused by external influences. This is a complete denial of the sinful nature in every human heart due to the fall. Jesus taught that bad behavior springs from a corrupt heart. Side note, he is saying babies' hearts are so corrupt they deserve to be hit. Quote, what's interesting is that God himself consistently used this mode with Israel in the Old Testament. The writers of Hebrews believe God continues to deal with his children this way. God hates kids, so you should too. Biblical discipline is administered in love and for the good of the child. There are many solid resources to help you bring your children up in discipline and instruction of the Lord. But I recommend Dare to Discipline by James Dobson.
Oh my god. Oh no.
Brooke, I hate Saul. I hate James Dobson.
Jake, I hate Pastor Saul. I hate James Dobson. I love you. I hate you because you made me sit here and watch you read Defying Gravity lyrics with tears in your eyes, and I'll never get it out of my brain ever. And you made me cry, which I knew you would. And I am so happy you're here.
Me too. I spent a lot of time in this dark period of time on the phone with the Trevor Project. I really recommend the Trevor Project for people out there, queer people out there struggling, especially queer youth. But anyone, there's help out there for you. It is okay. Life is tough. Life is shit. People go through things worse than I did. I got it pretty rough for a period of time. It do get better.
Yeah,
you can make it better.
There's another side to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brooke, how are you doing?
Not great.
Okay. Happy anniversary.
You're such an asshole. Oh, God. That was beautiful, Jake.
Reader, thank you for being on this journey with us. we will have a very big tonal shift next episode. It is a much lighter story.
Don't believe a word of it. I've been told that so many times.
We're going to have fun with it. It's a silly one.
I thought we were talking about a band called Skillet.
We did.
Want to know how I came out? When I was 36, I texted my mom and said, "Hey, I'm bisexual." And she went, "As long as you don't date Republicans."
And that's life advice. I Hate James Dobson is a labor of love, written, recorded, edited, and produced by me, Jake. I'm honored to be joined by my amazing co-host, Brooke. If you're enjoying the show, please consider rating and reviewing it, and if you want to connect with us more, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, and Blue Sky at I Hate James Dobson, and, unfortunately still, on Twitter at I Hate JDobs. If you want to email us, you can do so at ihatejamesdobson@gmail.com. Special thanks, as always, to Drew, Lindsay, DJ, and Jack. Our theme music is by Mood Maze, and the song is called Trendsetter. Thank you for enjoying the show. And what is on the menu today?
On the menu today, you have a Coke. Mm-hmm. We both have whiskey. I brought in some Girl Scout cookies.
You sure did. What kind?
Are called Samoas. Mm-hmm. But that's not what I called them growing up. I called them Caramel Delights. And that's what they were called. My best friend, who lives in Wisconsin, shout out, let's call her Sherry. She texted me the other day and was like, "Okay, well, I bought you 10 boxes of Thin Mints."
Hell yeah. Go off, Sherry.
So we'll have those soon.